Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate.
The South today is really not much different than the rest of the country, but the Old South, that's another story and what the Rosewood Massacre is all about. 60 years ago, Rosewood in North Florida was a thriving little community of about 200 people, almost all of them black. Early in January 1923, some 1,000 whites came to town, and when they left about a week later, Rosewood had been burned to the ground. No one knows for sure how many people were killed there. The figures might be as high as 40. For 60 years, the story of Rosewood remained secret and was only uncovered recently by Florida newspaperman Gary Moore, who is writing a book on the massacre at Rosewood. Rosewood. There's a road sign proclaiming its name, but no memorial commemorating its dead. Located 9 miles from the Gulf of Mexico at Cedar Key, Florida, Rosewood today is little more than a trailer park. You search in vain for any sign of a slaughter, for any hint of the mass murder that took place here a long time ago.
Well, what did it look like?
It's a big blaze. You seen things on fire. A big blaze, just burning down, just burning up the whole thing, just burning up my grandmama's house, churches, and everything. They burned up everything we had, all our clothes and everything. Yeah, they burned it up.
Why did they burn everything?
They was mad.
But you were just little children.
I know it. What did we care? They didn't care. They killed us. I was about 8 years old.
Minnie Lee Langley was only a child when she became a refugee. Now, she's a great-grandmother. At her home in Jacksonville, Florida, we talked to her about the place where she was born, Rosewood, Florida, the place that haunts her memory.
I know they killed my aunt, and they killed my granddaddy. Made my granddaddy dug his hole. He didn't have but one arm, but they made him dug his own grave. And he prayed, and they shot him backwards in the grave.
At Rosewood?
At Rosewood.
This is where it all began, in the white settlement of Sumner, just a few miles from Rosewood. Sumner disappeared in the late 1920s when a fire destroyed the sawmill. But back in 1923, Sumner was a booming little company town. James and Fannie Taylor had a home not far from here. On the morning of January 1st, 1923, James Taylor was already at work at the sawmill when neighbors said they heard his wife Fannie screaming for help. Fannie told her neighbors that a man had entered her home and attacked her, a black man.
She opened the door, but he just knocked her down, and she was raped.
Edith Foster was 16 years old at the time. She remembers seeing the few hundred white men of Sumner joined by others from surrounding counties, even from out of state. She remembers how they grew into a mob seeking revenge.
If he hadn't ever went in on this white lady, you know, well, there'd never been nothing to it.
It's not known for sure who attacked Fannie Taylor. Some whites say it was Sylvester Carrier, a young, strong-willed black man from Rosewood. Some blacks say the attacker was a white man. They say it was Fannie Taylor's boyfriend. But a lot of people tend to think the attacker was a black convict who had escaped from a nearby chain gang. Whoever he was, he touched off a week-long killing party.
They just, a bad crew come in here, and they just wiped it off of the map.
That night, around about 9 o'clock or 8:30, there they come in a car.
They kept looking for this Sylvester, but they didn't seem to find him. And then they went back up there that night and to talk to his mother.
Calling for my aunt, saying, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. And so my aunt didn't say nothing because she was scared too.
And that's when all the shooting began, you see.
They went to shooting all in the house, all upstairs in the windows.
These colored folks, you know, they were ready for it.
And I was sitting right between his legs. And he had the gun over to my right shoulder.
This was Sylvester.
Yes, I got down under him, and these old white people busted the door down. When they busted the door down, that's where he dropped them. He just dropped everyone come to the door.
He shot them?
Yeah.
Well, they killed Mr. Anders before he got to the house. They loaded him with a buckshot right here. Killed him dead. They had to leave him there.
At least 2 white men were killed that night, forcing the mob to retreat. It was then that the black women and children, 12 or 13 of them, ran from the bullet-riddled Carrier home and into the woods. Minnie Lee Langley, 8 years old at the time, ran with them.
We had a aunt with us, so scrappy. She was just like a hen with a nest of biddies. She taken us to the woods, kept us out in the woods. She kept us out in the woods almost a week.
There's swamps out there.
Well, we stayed in there. Took her like a soldier and stayed out there in the woods.
You went through those swamps?
Yes, we went all out in the woods. And she built a little bit of fire for us to stay warm because it was so cold at night.
In the morning, the mob returned, several hundred strong. Inside the Carrier home, they found Sarah, Sylvester's mother. She was dead. They also found another body, a black man. Some people say it was Sylvester, but no one really knows for sure. What we do know is what happened next. The mob set the Carrier home on fire, and they watched it burn. And then that mob grew in size, it grew in anger, and it became even more violent.
You ain't never seen a mob like that.
Fred Kirkland was a teenager when he saw the mob rampaging through Rosewood.
They went wild. There was 1,000 to 1,500 people there by that time, and they're coming in from every direction. And they was crazy. They give the high sheriff and the deputy 5 minutes to get out of sight and not come back.
They told the sheriff and the deputy to get out of town and not come back?
Get out of there. Give them 5 minutes to get out of sight.
And what did the sheriff and the deputy do?
They left there. And then they went to burning houses, killing people you never seen.
Yeah, Sunday morning they came through here, you know, setting houses on fire. And as each one ran out, they'd shoot them, kill them. And there was a colored woman right here, lived just across here in the woods from me. And her name was Lexi Gordon, and she was sick. She had typhoid fever. And when she told her, the ones that was staying there with her, for them to go ahead and get away if they could, well, she'd just take whatever come, you know. Well, naturally, when they set the house afire, well, she ran out and ran out towards the back. And she had a back door, Johnny, you know, out there, and so she made for it. And they shot her before she got there.
But she had nothing to do
Nothing
with...
to do with it at all, whatever. And, well, it was the way with a lot of them, you see. That was the reason it was such a situation that we just couldn't understand. It was just a mad bunch of men come in here.
What do you think they got out of it? Why did they do it?
Motive, I guess, satisfaction is all I can figure it out. I don't know what it was.
Satisfaction.
I reckon that was it.
Well, the whole place was in smoke around here, you know. And they said they had destroyed all the buildings. And said that there would be no more to live here no more, you know. They couldn't come back and live.
Miss Langley, would you go back to Rosewood with us?
I would go. I would go if y'all don't let them bother me or nothing like that. I don't want to go there and get hurt or nothing. Yeah.
You remember?
My little darling.
We brought Minnie Lee Langley back to Rosewood for the first time in 60 years. We also asked Lee Ruth Davis, Leroy Carrier, and Sam Hall, all survivors of Rosewood, to come back for a day.
Oh. Hello, Sammy.
Hey. You remember her, Mr. Hall?
Yeah. Oh, she looked this up for this Marcy.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, yeah. This is Marcy.
Was that what they used to call you?
That's what they call me, Marcy.
You look just like Miss Virginia.
Yeah, my mother.
Yeah.
I'm bringing back memory that I wished I could get rid of. You know what I mean? This has been a hobby. If you just had been here to listen to all this and see some of it, then you would have known just what it was. We lost everything.
Lost everything.
You own the land.
Yeah, we own our land, all of them.
And no one ever paid you any money for this land?
No.
You just lost it.
Took it.
What do you say to children today? Children like this boy, like your great-grandson, and people who didn't grow up when you grew up, and people who didn't go through what you went through, people who would say, this couldn't have happened in this country. Come on.
I would tell them like this. I said, don't ever stay in a place that white folks can surround it. Don't never stay in a place that white folks can surround it. Because if anything happens some ways else, they'll run you out from your home, just like they did us.
Not many whites lived in Rosewood at that time, really just a handful. Among the few who did live here was a man by the name of John Wright, who owned the general store. John Wright lived in this house. It's one of the few that has survived. To blacks in Rosewood, John Wright was a hero. He opened his home to many of the women and children who were hiding from that mob. And John Wright did even more. He was able to get a message to the railroad that said, the town is on fire, send a train. And that's how many blacks escaped from Rosewood, by train.
Who was on the train? You were on the train?
I was on the train. I'll never forget it. It was night when the train come there. It was 4 o'clock. When we left Mr.
4
Wright.
o'clock in the morning?
That's right. And he told them, conductor, to pull the train on to stop anywhere on the road that he saw women's and children, but not men, because they didn't know who the men would be.
If it hadn't been for this house.
We wouldn't have been here, because we wouldn't have had nowhere to hide.
Rosewood. You won't find an accurate account of it in any history book. Yet, about 40 people were killed here one terrifying week 60 years ago. When you think about it, far greater atrocities have happened elsewhere in the world. But Rosewood belongs to America. It's a real American horror story. The wonder is that it stayed secret so long. Minnie Lee Langley never even told her family.
I didn't want them to know that I was scouting through the woods to stay out there all night long, out there in that cold and all that stuff. I didn't
Running
want
for your life?
Trying to save my life. I didn't want them to know just how I come along, you know, through all of this and what the white folks had did to us, because I thought it was really mean. What they did to us was mean, and did it without a cause.